Greetings, everybody. We are live with another fantastic, exciting, stupendous episode of D Live, the Convo series. We have a special guest tonight, not Jake, who's here with us, but we've got Josie here over my shoulder, making a low key appearance. As we give it a minute for a few folks to pop on and come online. I did want to remind everybody that I am posting these to my YouTube channel as well. Derek Bauman, if you search for me on YouTube, please give a follow on there as well. And you can see, basically, it's going to be an archive of all of these. And, hopefully there'll be good reference in the future, something. But for folks, if you miss it, it'll stay up on Facebook, on my page, and then also on YouTube. Feel free to go back and watch. So we have a few people joining us right now, so certainly appreciate that. If anybody wants to share the video, especially our friends in College Hill, which will be the focus neighborhood this evening with Jake, love to have you share it, and so we can get some more information out to the good folks in College Hill. So with all of that being said, Jacob Samad's my guest tonight. Wow, man, like I'm reading down through your resume and your bio, and it's like it would be the whole show just reading this off. You're so involved and engaged with so many things, but native Cincinnati and huge Reds fans, got the family there in College Hill. Attorney by trade. He's a bigwig attorney downtown, and involved in so many community things. Chirk, the neighborhood community development corporation there that's involved in a lot of the redevelopment in College Hill, and a charter committee. I think you're still on the charter board, involved with the zoo's ambassador program, and just a whole slew of volunteer activities. So one of our most engaged Cincinnatians. Jake, it's fantastic to have you joining us tonight, man. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Derek. Thanks for having me. That was too kind. I have a hard time saying no sometimes, people tell me, and so it ends up in places.
Right. Well, I mean, you probably want to say no to this, but so it kind of worked out for us.
What is this going to be? And I said, hey, it's me and Derek. We're going to be on Facebook Live or something. The Facebook. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a Facebook thing. So, kind of the format of the program for folks that haven't joined us before. We like to hear not only about what great Cincinnatians are up to these days, much of the things that we see, but also just a little bit about the backstory, because I think it's so instructive about how folks got to be where they are, and why you're so passionate about about College Hill and about the city of Cincinnati in general. As we know, you're like the greatest Reds fan ever invented. So, could you share with us just a little of your backstory?
Sure. So, Derek, we were talking a little bit before. I grew up in Westwood. Spoiler for everybody. Until I was 1 year old, and then on my first birthday, we moved to College Hill, to Landfair Avenue, where I grew up and lived there. Went to College Hill Fundamental Academy in my elementary school days. Then we moved, right up the street, about a mile and a half away, to Hollywood, where my mom still lives. I went to Walnut Hills High School, and then met my wife. Went to UC for undergrad. Went to University of Pittsburgh for law school, so I had a brief sojourn, and then we came back. And when we came back, where did we move? We moved to College Hill. So right in between my mom's house and the house we grew up in on Landfair. We live on Marlowe now, and really love it. I've been here, like you said, my whole life, pretty much. I've gotten involved in the neighborhood and really excited to see a lot of what's been going on, and love living life with our neighbors and just getting to do life together. So it's been fun.
Yeah, so one of the great things I think about the city of Cincinnati is that we have these, the city as a whole. You've got the core downtown, but these kind of satellite neighborhoods with the neighborhood business districts that are walkable. We want to make them more walkable. We'll talk about that. But that's one of the big things, and I think one of your focuses, not only the whole city and all of those things, but the things that you're engaged in College Hill specifically. So kind of bring us up through the time. Obviously, you've lived there most of your life.
Yeah.
And then how, what kind of drove you to get involved in all of this stuff, and really try to really get involved and sink your teeth into, making life better for College Hill?
Sure. So going back to when we were in elementary school, my dad worked and my mom stayed home with us, my sister and I, and we had one car, and we would drive my dad to work on days when my mom needed the car, and he would take the car to work on days when he needed the car, and we'd walk to school. And after school, my mom would pick us up, and we'd walk up and down the business district and pick up food for dinner, and go to the market and go to the butcher. And there was a little card store my mom would always drag us to buy greeting cards, and then we'd walk home, and that was life in our neighborhood. And I grew up playing knothole, and that's where I developed my love for baseball and our College Hill Lord's Bounty team. Lord's Bounty is still a great asset in our neighborhood here, and they were sponsors of our knothole team, and that was growing up. And we had the Hollywood Theater, and we had graders, and we had a furniture store, an appliance store. We had McCall's, we had a great wine shop, all those sorts of things. And that was the neighborhood I grew up in. And it looked a lot like it looks today, with diverse neighbors and great folks, except that a lot of those businesses got to the point where they were mature first or second generation businesses, and they were looking for the next generation of business owners to come in, and maybe they didn't have someone in their family or whatever else. And Best Buy is opening up, and Applebee's is opening up, and all these sorts of things are happening kind of in the inner ring suburbs. And these businesses didn't continue on. And so in the late 80s, kind of mid 90s, we saw a lot of things in College Hill kind of moving out. The Kroger moved out at the corner of Hamilton and North Bend. The Schuler's Wigwam closed, which is an institution in the city since the 50s. Oh, is it beer time? Oh, because then we'll get.
Is it never not? When is it not beer time?
It's never not beer time, but we'll get to Brink here in a minute. But growing up, those are the memories, and kind of seeing a lot of those. Businesses kind of leave and leave kind of holes along our business district. It's kind of like, wow, we got to do something about this. And there have been a ton of great neighbors in College Hill through the years who have kind of taken their own initiative, put their money where their mouth is, and started businesses on their own. I mean, Marty Weldishofer now is a great example of that. But back the Schwartz Jewelers has been here for forever. It's the greatest jewelry store in the whole city. If you haven't heard of it, you should. I don't know where you've been. It's great. But the Schwartzes are huge supporters of College Hill, and did a ton of work in that time in the mid 90s, early 2000s, when there were some things going on, and we needed to make sure that we were controlling what our neighborhood was going to be, and helping it be as what we know it can be. So businesses like the coffee shop opened up. And like I said, the wine store opened, and those sorts of things started to happen. And I started to see kind of in my high school years what redevelopment could look like. And so I kind of got interested in it then. And then when I came back after law school, we're in 2007, 2008. So as you remember, I'm sure things weren't phenomenal then.
Right.
So I was looking for ways, as a new lawyer, trying to figure out how I could meet people and make an impact. And I thought, well, a neighborhood redevelopment corporation is a nice mix of small businesses and real estate. And, I bet I might, as a transactional attorney, be able to help. And so one of my partners now, who was then my mentor, Mark Patterson, who still lives in the neighborhood, got me involved with Chirk. And I think what happened is they asked him to be on the board, and he had already served 2 or 3 terms. And I think he wasn't too excited to get on again. And so he said, "Hey, Jake, why don't you do it?" So I showed up at a meeting, and the second meeting I came back, and they elected me to the board on the second meeting. And I think, 6 meetings later, I was the vice president. I was the vice president of the board for the last 10 years under Mike Kappel's great leadership as the president of Chirk. And Mike's a great guy and has done a lot for our neighborhood over this past decade. But now he is no longer the president. So I've stepped into that role, and I've been the president now for a few months, and excited to continue a lot of the good momentum we have going in the neighborhood.
No, and that's man, that's just fantastic stuff. And hearing that background, hopefully Mike's joining us tonight as well.
Well, Matt Bourgeois is. He's the only one that we really care about.
Mike's a good dude. We think back to that time, and I think a lot of people, I'm down here in the Over the Rhine neighborhood. I've been here, 10 years now, but I think there's been a lot of revisionist history. We forget about, kind of those dark times for the city as we had this kind of outward migration. It wasn't just Cincinnati, it was cities across the country. We had not only sprawl of people where we lost, 40% of our population from the mid 50s to around 2010, and we've slowly been coming back. But people forgot how it was. Downtown we used to roll the sidewalks up and at 5 o'clock, and that was it. And of course, we've seen this in neighborhoods, across the city, particularly in the West Side, was hit very hard in a number of ways. And we kind of lose sight of that, and it's just been through so much hard work that folks like yourself and others that have been invested and really done the hard work to help bring our neighborhood business districts back. And now, the way I see it, and I'll get your thoughts on it. There's this tendency now to come back to the cities. We want to be closer. We don't want to be 50 miles away commuting. We'll see what post COVID, if that has any long term effects or not. And so there was a lot of focus on downtown and the core. But I think really the next wave, and many things tie into it. I think strong public schools. I think great walkable neighborhoods and safe streets so that I can push a baby stroller down to the local coffee shop and feel like I'm not going to get run down trying to cross the street. And all of these things kind of come into play, but this is kind of, I think, really the next phase. And we see it. I think our local, our breweries have played a role in this. West Side Brewery, Brink, and others. That are creating like a neighborhood, I call them like the living room, our coffee shops in the day and the breweries in the evening.
Our third places.
Common space.
Yep. Our third places, yeah, where we can all hang out together as neighbors.
Yeah, no, that's a great way of phrasing it. So do you kind of sense that? Do you see that as Cincinnati continues our growth, that we need to focus on our walkable neighborhood business districts like that?
Yeah, I really do. I mean, I think there are a couple, there are 52 neighborhoods in Cincinnati, and they're all great in their own way. And one of the things I love about our city, and I noticed when I was in school in Pittsburgh, I mean, Pittsburgh is unique as well in that it has these pockets and these enclaves. But here we have these really distinct neighborhoods that each have their own kind of feel. And a lot of that's driven by their business district. And so in our city, we have lots of, we have community councils, we have other civic associations, we have community redevelopment corporations and CDCs. And so, I obviously think that the College Hill CURC is the best one. We call it CHIRC. There's one in the city called Chakirk, but it's not real at all.
Don't screw that up. You're in big trouble in College Hill if you screw Chirk.
Well, no. Chakirk is a thing, apparently, but in College Hill we don't recognize it. And that's for Matt Bourgeois. He'll comment later, I'm sure. But no, the CDCs are really the ones that are tasked with trying to figure out how we make those business districts walkable and accessible to the neighborhood. We want to be providing a varied mix of businesses. We want to make sure that the people in the neighborhood are well served by their business district and that it's reflective of the people who live here. And we really want to make sure that, whether you've lived here for, 80 years or whether you've been here for 2 or 3, you feel welcome, you feel part of the neighborhood, and you feel like there are things here that you can see yourself in. And really, that's part of what College Hill has been trying to do over the last 10, 15 years. We honestly, as corny as it may sound, we've been trying to build bridges. We've been trying to get, businesses here that might not have thought of College Hill as their home. But I think we're really showing through some of our recent successes how great College Hill is and how welcoming it can be to new business.
And I think, one of the folks, and we've had folks from across the city on the show already, and I'm going to continue to do that and highlight some of these different angles. I think it really plays into real estate, and I hope to have a realtor on sometime in the near future to kind of talk about what the current status of that is. But we've seen, especially areas where I'm super involved and engaged, and have remodeled some houses up in East Price Hill, and how all of that was reflective, and of course the 2008 housing crash. We had so many foreclosures and the impacts of that. But my sense is that having that strong neighborhood business district then really just makes a neighborhood more attractive to folks, maybe even folks that live in the suburbs that want to come back because they don't want to be 100 miles away, and those types of things. Are we seeing that at all in College Hill? Have we been?
Yeah, I think we've been seeing it in lots of neighborhoods throughout the city. I mean, obviously, the obvious one that we point to a lot is OTR. and what's going on along Vine Street where you live. And if I remember correctly, you came from Mason, right, and have come back to the city and are a great asset. And that's what this thing can do. And I think it really attracts people to this more livable, walkable lifestyle where they have sidewalks, where they can interact with their neighbors, where they aren't kind of going into their 2-car garage and walking, through their house and only to come out to go to work, right? Where we can live life together. And I think neighborhoods like Walnut Hills and Madisonville and Westwood and Price Hill, I mean, they have these great thriving organizations that are really helping to make sure that that is kind of what's going on now. And the city's been great. I mean, the city has put its money where its mouth is. I mean, we have specific people at the city that we work with, and it's fun to get to know them over time and to argue with them about what we think is best for our neighborhood and what they think is best for our neighborhood. And it's a lot of fun to go back and forth. But really, the city has invested in neighborhoods in really meaningful ways, and I think it is important. I mean, obviously, development can be a double-edged sword at times, but I think it is really helpful when you have development being directed by the people that it most closely affects. And that's what neighborhood CDCs really are able to do, and are able to speak into. And we're the boots on the ground, as it were. So we're the ones that, when community engagement needs to happen, we're the ones who can, knock on our neighbors' doors.
Right.
We're the ones that can.
That's a great point. Let me interrupt you right there for a moment.
Yeah.
We've got a bunch of folks and a lot of your neighbors commenting, dropping comments on here, and so you got a lot of fans. That's for sure. You're popular.
Well, it's either me or it's you, Derek. I think it might be you.
Well, I don't know. I don't know about that, but I appreciate it. So yeah, we've got Robin Warner stopping by, Kurt Myers, Matt Bourgeois.
Gorgeous.
Giving a shout out, Janae Cheney, and my good buddy Dr. David Beck stopped by asking about when do we get to see Josie, the official OTR Over the Rhine mascot. Well, actually, she's right here, Dr. She's right here, Dr. Beck. Not enthused by any of this whatsoever, but you never know. She may be jumping up here front and center, but. At any rate, if anybody has a question or a comment or a question as we go, I will keep an eye on the comments and happy to get to those. One of the questions that I have, and Jake, you kind of mentioned it with these community development corporations. Can you tell us a little bit more about, for those that aren't really familiar, and I don't, I could even stand to know more about the kind of the legal structure. How are are they nonprofits? How does that really work? We know there's a number of them in different neighborhoods across the city. What does that structure look like?
Yeah, so they're statutorily prescribed. They started in the early mid 70s, I believe. College Hill Community Urban Redevelopment Corporation was formed in 1975. I believe it's one of the oldest CDCs in the city. And ultimately, they're charged with a specific mission of helping to develop and or redevelop the business district within their neighborhood. Sometimes their mission can expand into housing issues and other types of development, but primarily they're pretty narrowly defined. And they typically are 501c3s, so donations to church, for example, are tax deductible. And we always appreciate those. But really, it's a conduit for, it's really the earliest form of the public-private partnership, where we hope to get private investment from neighbors through donations and through volunteerism, and match that with city resources. Typically, CDCs do not have resources of their own. They may acquire property over time, and that may generate revenue. But typically, all of that is kind of just put back into the neighborhood. So it's not that the CDC itself controls the money. Usually the city or the foundations where we're getting grants and those sorts of things do. But ultimately, we're tasked with stewarding it and using it for the best, in the best interest of the neighborhood, and hopefully making these places vibrant places to live, work, and play. And so different neighborhoods use them differently. Sometimes the community council takes on a little bit more of that role. Sometimes it's more in the redevelopment corporation or the development corporation. And so different neighborhoods handle it a little differently. But in College Hill, we have a very strong forum which is kind of like the quality of life place, kind of our community council.
Right.
And then we have Chirk, which is tasked with redeveloping and maintaining the business district. Then we have great other associations here called, the College of Gardeners. We have the College of Business Association. We have the Ministerium, which is the group of churches that are in the neighborhood. So lots of great civic organizations in College Hill. I always like to say that we're one of the most, I would say, uniquely situated neighborhoods in that we have all of these different organizations, but we're all working towards the same goals. And I think sometimes neighborhoods can get a little sideways when you have these different organizations doing different things. We've been blessed in College Hill that we've all tried to see the same vision and we've worked towards it. And so I think we've had some recent successes, and Brink was one of the big ones. We had Red Rose Jim's Pizzeria come in not too long ago, some great pizza. We've had Fern open. You can see the plant behind me is from Fern. I mean, all kinds of new businesses that have come in. There was a time when I went to an event at the Derek, what's the name on Short Vine of the UC DAP has that? Is it the Niederman Center?
Yeah, I believe so. I know what you're.
Yeah, something it's for DAP, and they talk about city planning and architecture and things. And it was a thing about microbreweries and how microbreweries can transform neighborhoods and all those sorts of things. And this was probably in 2016, maybe 2015, 16. I'd been on Chirk at that point for 5, 6 years, and I went to this presentation because Mike Capel couldn't go, so he said, "Jake, you got to go to this thing," and there was beer, so I went. And so I go to this thing, and I hear about Rheingeist and what it's doing for over the Rhine, and I hear about MadTree and what it's doing for this little known area in Oakley before it had moved, and I'm thinking to myself, man, when in College Hill we've been doing all of this work, when are we going to get something like that? And so I call Mike on my way home from that meeting, and I say, Mike, I don't know if I can keep doing this. I don't know if I can stay on this thing. We're never going to get a brewery, and really we need a brewery, and that's what's going to kind of draw all this stuff together. And I kid you not, like 3 weeks, maybe a month later, we get a call from Andy McLeese, and we start talking about Brink. And here we are today, where I'm got a crowler from the brewery that's right down my street. You talk about walkable neighborhoods. When Amy and I moved to this house, we could walk to we could walk to the College Hill Coffee Company, Bacall's, Schwartz Jewelers. I think that was about it. In terms of businesses. Now we walk down the street, we have Tortilleria Garcia, we have a Pocket Park, yep. We have Brink, we have Kiki, the best ramen in the city. Tortilleria Garcia, you should have seen on Cinco de Mayo. The line was around the building, through the parking lot, like wrapped around. Now, part of that could have been because of the distancing requirements. I'm not going to say, but it was crazy.
Well, their food's amazing. Number one,
yeah.
I've eaten there, and their Hugos, their juices that they have, and Kiki's amazing as well. I mean, all of the stuff. It just seems to be just everything's really fitting. You're getting quality operators in there. And whatever you all are doing is just working as far as I can see. You mentioned a couple of things I kind of took note of, and I wanted to point out. One of the things that I've noticed down here and over the Rhine over the past decade that I've been down here is, the folks that have kind of transitioned, your young professionals, maybe single young professionals, or folks working in the hospitality industry and those types of things that want to be, a part of that and the vibe and everything. And then as time goes on, you get into a relationship, you get married, you have a kid. You don't want to move out to Mason and Westchester and go to Applebee's, necessarily for happy hour. You still want to be close to the city, in a walkable area, all those types of things. So. And that's really, I think, not only our challenge, but our great opportunity. But I've been seeing it happen here, where folks, instead of moving out, all the way out of the city, they're choosing our neighborhoods, such as College Hill, Westwood, Price Hill, Pleasant Ridge, and name drop all the rest. But it's for this, just for this notion of just this kind of going back to what you were talking about when you were young. That you can walk down and you have this and I have that. I don't need to go out to the Walmart, 30 miles out. And then those dollars stay local. We keep them in Cincinnati and not putting them into our gas tank to go to wherever. And it just becomes a positive kind of feedback loop. And
Right.
we see that happening, and I've seen it. And I think it's fantastic that we're more and more retaining folks in the city.
Yeah, I mean, when College Hill started, before it was annexed, I mean, it was its own village. We have a town hall here. It was its own uniquely kind of populated area, and it was its own city essentially. And so it had, the town square. It had the business district, and it's really meant to be a place where people can, grow up, buy a first home, move to their second home, and then retire. We have great retirement communities here in Twin Towers and Landfair, and great housing stock for a first time home buyer, as well as your dream forever home. So it's a great neighborhood with a lot of the convenience of city living, with still a yard and a place where my daughter Audrey learned to ride her bike today. So you can't do that on Vine Street necessarily.
Right.
Hopefully soon. Hopefully soon.
That's right.
Yeah, but so she learned to ride her bike today, and we're living a normal American life in a city, right? And it's pretty fun, and we really appreciate that, and really have enjoyed seeing a lot of these neighborhoods grow into that. And I do think it's attractive. I mean, I work downtown, and it takes me between 12 and 15 minutes in the morning to get to work.
Right.
I mean, so my commute is a quarter of what some of my friends' commutes are. And so, I feel pretty lucky to be here. And while it's great to talk about all these things about College Hill, I'm a little hesitant because I don't want it to get too above the radar.
But everybody find out about it. The secret's
I really
gonna
do.
get out, man. So, but you bring up a great point. I think there's immense value in that, and I don't think people necessarily always connect these dots. But if you're spending 15 minutes on a commute and somebody else is spending 45, that's a half hour each way. That's an hour a day. That's 5 hours a week. Start adding that up. It's an immense amount of time.
Point ones. I bill in 6-minute increments. For me, 5 hours a week, that's a lot of money.
Right.
I mean, that's a big deal.
Hey, speaking of that, and all of the good things going on in the different businesses and such, Helen Kane has a question asking about, one of the issues that we have across the city are food deserts.
Right.
And it's challenging. Kroger's pulled out of Walnut Hills in a couple places. Are there any plans for a grocery store, a good grocery store, any plans like that we know of?
Not currently. Obviously, that's one of the things that we hear a lot. When Kroger left in the early 2000s, they moved up the street, which doesn't sound like a big deal because it's only about a mile and a half farther north than it was, but it's in a different metro zone. So to get from College Hill to the new Kroger, you have to pay an increased fare to get there, and so it is inconvenient. And we would really love to have a grocery store here. I know Joe Hansbauer is doing wonderful work at the Finley Market Foundation Corporation. I hope that eventually we're going to have something that we can announce here. I mean, I know that the folks down in Northside at Apple Street Market are talking about some plans, and I really hope that we can come up with a model that will work in neighborhoods. But right now we don't have any immediate, people knocking on the door. We do have a really exciting development that's a long time coming at the corner of North Bend and Hamilton, kind of transects or quadsecs, I guess, our neighborhood. So it's really our main on Main, and the hope is that we're gonna get that thing out of the ground here in the third quarter, hopefully second quarter maybe, which is it's going to be a mixed use development with commercial space on the first floor, residential up top. It'll be market rate apartments with also workforce affordable units as well, because it fits the rents in College Hill fit into that currently. So there'll be affordable housing for people who are working in our businesses, people who are working at the bank down the street, at the coffee shop, but then also maybe empty nesters, people who want to leave their beautiful homes in College Hill so I can buy my next home in College Hill. Hint, hint. But those are the things that are coming up, and it's going to be a great development that's going to be at the corner of North Bend and Hamilton. So hopefully that will spur a lot more businesses, and hopefully there will be some grocery opportunities.
No, that's fantastic news. And is this breaking? Or was this breaking news
No,
on the
it's not
show
breaking.
tonight?
It's you just haven't been to any of the meetings in College Hill to hear about it for the last 14 years. It's the least breaking news there possibly could be.
All right. Well, I'm always looking for an angle.
All of the College Hill folks watching will be chuckling at that because this was breaking news circa 2008, I think.
All right. Well, maybe the news is we're moving forward now in a real way, and there's a light at the end of the
That's right.
tunnel here, which is fantastic. But I think that's one of the things that that we're seeing is people don't want to have to drive to 100 different places,
Right.
and so if you can be kind of self-contained, walkable. And also, I think it's very important to have a mix, as you mentioned, some workforce housing and those types of things, and so that you have a mix and we can be attractive to to everybody, no matter what your income level is, no matter what your as you mentioned, the lifestyle or like your life situation changes. Maybe I don't want to take care of a yard anymore and all that, so I move
Right.
back to an apartment. We can have this cycle, right?
Right.
Um,
Right.
and the other thing, just to Helen's question about the grocery stores is that business is just such a challenge because of the slim margins, and we've seen the struggles at Clifton Market, and which is still operational, but that whole model kind of changed and created some strife within the neighborhood and all of those types of things. So it's a tough nut to crack with that, but hopefully you have some more success. But I think one of the benefits, speaking to strife within the neighborhood, another thing that you mentioned is the different organizations in College Hill, playing nicely. I think some of the neighborhoods that struggle a little bit more with some of this stuff, there's kind of factions or there's some kind of infighting amongst the groups, or we're still holding a grudge against Mary from something that happened 30 years ago.
Right.
And that kind of stuff just kind of holds you back from taking that next step and moving forward. So one of the things that I see of the most successful neighborhoods across Cincinnati is the different organizations kind of setting the egos aside and all of that kind of stuff, and just realize that we're here for the community, for the people, for the neighborhood, and kind of working towards these common goals, which it sounds like that's the case there.
Definitely is. I mean, it's one of the things that I've really loved about here, living here. I mean, the College Hill Gardeners, they throw a pumpkin patch every fall and have a garden tour every spring/early summer, and that stuff gets posted on Chirk's page. And when Chirk has their Derby Day event, although we weren't able to have it this year, and when we have our rhythm or our Blues and Brews race, 5K every fall, that gets posted on the Gardeners page and the forum poster, and so we really work together. And one of the great things, Derek, about this neighborhood, I just mentioned the Derby Day. We obviously had to cancel this year because there was no Derby right now, and also because of obviously what we needed to stay at home. But in lieu of that's one of our major fundraisers for the organization each year. So people buy tickets, they come to Laurel Court, which is a crazy house in College Hill that the Moyers have stewarded so well. And it's an amazing place. But you get to come, you get to see, you get to wear your derby hat, you get to drink mint juleps as to your heart's content. It's great. But there's an admission price, and then there's auctions throughout the night and all kinds of things. It's a huge fundraiser for us. And so we weren't able to do that this year. So we reached out to the neighborhood and we said, hey, look, in lieu of doing this, what if we have this Alive and Thrive campaign where we're able to you still donate maybe your ticket price or some of the money you would have donated, and we're going to donate some of the money back to the businesses in College Hill. So we raised over $22,000 just
Really?
through the neighborhood. Yeah, over this
Hey,
past couple weeks.
that's amazing.
And yeah, and so a quarter of that went back in the form of grants to businesses in the neighborhood. And also, one of the things that we've been able to do because of our kind of concerted effort to work together is right now, Chirk has actually become the owner of a lot of these buildings. So when COVID struck and these businesses had to close and life changed, we were able to abate rent. For some of these businesses, and we were able to try to do what we could to make sure that this is obviously going to slow us down, but when we get moving again, we want to make sure everybody comes with us.
Right.
And so we don't want anybody to be left behind. And luckily, because of this kind of unified effort, we're able to do that. And this neighborhood is generous and crazy in its generosity, and it really one of my things that I always like to aspire to is I really like to try to contribute as opposed to just consuming. And I feel like I've learned that living in College Hill. I feel like I've had examples of that. I've had people show it to me and live it in front of me. And I feel like that's one of the greatest things about our neighborhood. And I know it exists in other neighborhoods as well. I was listening to John Eby the other day. He's a good friend of mine. I could sit next to him on planning commission, and that dude can do some crazy origami. I don't know if it's, he is an origami master, but he always says, I can't remember the exact words, but he says it never hurts to be kind, or something like that. Doing good is always appreciated, something like that. But for me, and what I mean, people like him and people that live in College Hill have shown me is, we're here, we're living this crazy life together. Let's be contributors. Let's all work together and do this thing well, as opposed to just figuring out what's in it for us.
No, and that's awesome. Words of wisdom from Eby. It's not often that I say that, but
I might not ever say it again. I never say it again.
But in his honor, I do have my West Side Brewing koozie, as well as my.
Derek, I'm gonna tell you another funny story. I don't know how long you're gonna let me go on, so I got to get this story in.
All right, get the story in, because yes, I am. In my opinion,
whoa! Don't spoil my story.
All right. Oh my God, I'm giving the story away.
Brink comes into College Hill.
All right, go ahead. Sorry.
They come up with all these new beers. This is Maiden Voyage, which is their new New England style IPA. They have a great beer. I don't know if you've had it. It's called the Jake Leg. It's a really good one. But
who's that? Is that named after somebody?
Maybe. I don't know. I'm not.
I think I was there for the launch. I have had it.
Yeah. So the idea. I love good beer. I love drinking beer at Brink. Kelly and Andy one night cornered me, and they said, Jake, one thing that we need to know, if we're going to come into College Hill, what is your island beer? And I said, my island beer. And they're like, yeah. If you're stuck on a deserted island, what beer do you take with you? So I think for a minute, and I said, well, guys, I mean, I love good beer, but I mean, I'm taking Miller Lite. They're like, what? I'm like, what other beer can quench your thirst, and you can drink however many of them you want, and you know where you're going to be and whatever else? I mean, I drink one of these things, and who knows what happens? Am I right, Noah? Am I right? I mean, Noah knows what I'm talking about.
Nothing too crazy has happened. Yeah, we're waiting for it. We're waiting for the crazy to come out.
That's right. So I saw your Miller Lite, and it made me chuckle, because I do love some Miller Lite. Although tonight I am doing College Hill proud. I'm drinking my Maiden Voyage. So
there you go. That's perfect. See how this all ties together. I love it. And to be honest, I'm not a Miller Lite fan. I happen to have one in the back of the fridge, but if I come into a supply, I know who I can get.
Hey, you know who to call. I mean, if I'm coming over, there better be some in the fridge. That's all I'm saying.
Of course, we'll make it happen. Just a couple points on what you had mentioned, and then we got a question here that I want to get to as well. But one of the things that you had mentioned was just. No, completely. Maybe it is getting crazy. I completely lost my train of thought. The fundraiser. So that's amazing. $22,000. That's fantastic support. I've been to Derby Day. It's just a great party anyway. Besides being for a great cause as well, and some of the other events. But I think that's a great point to bring out that this is a nonprofit type of situation. It really depends on. People is giving, getting engaged, and coming to these different events and the fundraisers and different stuff. So that is super important. We want to encourage that. But let me get to a question here. Somebody you might know, Christy Samad, wants to know what's going on with the Hollywood Theater.
Yeah. Come on, Chris, you know better than that. So Christy and I grew up in College Hill together. She's my sister. And the Hollywood Theater is a long-standing tradition in College Hill, is where a lot of us grew up going to movies. And we had a great community partner, the House of Joy, that occupied the Hollywood for the majority of the 90s and 2000s. They were there for over 20 years. Did a tremendous service to our neighborhood, really cared for the people here well, and we're a great neighborhood asset. But they were looking for some expansion to do some more of their ministry more effectively, and so a couple years ago we came to an agreement, and we purchased the CHIRC, College Hill Community Urban Redevelopment Corporation purchased that building, and we hope to redevelop it here soon. Obviously, current situation has caused us to take a little bit of a pause on what our plans are for it, but we hope to activate some of the Hollywood here soon. to try to get people back together when we can be back together. There are great ideas simmering. And so we want to hear them all from the neighborhood. We've had some community engagement sessions to hear what people want to see there. Obviously, grocery stores, one of the things. Theater is one of the things. But we want to really make sure that whatever decision we make a good decision that's going to serve the neighborhood well over time,
Right.
and it's really going to be beneficial. It's funny. My brother-in-law just texted me and told me that he told Christy to ask that. So I feel
That's
like,
good information for the people.
yeah, but no, it's great. It's good, and it's one of those things. We really one of the jobs of this any CDC is to steward its assets and to steward specifically the opportunities it has in the community. And this is one that really has the opportunity to make or break us over the next 10, 15, 20 years. If we make a bad, short-sighted decision now because we think it could be this right now, and that would be great. And 5, 10 years down the road, we're like, maybe not. Who knows what's going to happen then? So we're really trying to make a good decision here and steward this asset well. So
That's no, that's good. That is good information, and then kind of leads me into kind of our kind of closing segment in our story arc in the shows here is to kind of talk about where we've been, where we are, and then where we're going. But before we get to that, I would be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to the Hal Bisons. Noah's on here giving you hell, and
that's good. That's
and he's pointing out also that Elena's first job was at the Hollywood Theater back in the day. So as another example of folks from College Hill that grew up there that didn't get too far and stay and are super engaged in the community. So that's super cool. So having said that, what do so it sounds like you've got a couple of projects kind of on the back burner. Maybe some properties just kind of standing by, ready for the next phase. What's your kind of vision? Where do we go next in the next 1 to 5 years? And is there a longer term plan of is it more? Are there some specific things that we want to do, or where do we go from here?
Well, I mean, I think obviously in the short term, immediately we got to get out of this time, right? We got to figure out what it looks like to get businesses reopened safely in a way that keeps our neighbors safe and gets us back to what our new normal will be. I'm sure you've learned things about yourself and just during this time, and there are things that we will take out of these last 8 weeks or whatever with us. And I think one of the things that Chirk is going to take forward is this idea that we're all in this together. And this is our neighborhood. It needs to be representative of the people who live here. It needs to be one that puts us in a position where we can all thrive together. Our fundraising campaign was Alive and Thrive. We want to keep these businesses going. When Jack and Audrey grow up, I don't want them telling a story about the 5-10 year period where they remembered all these cool things when they were kids, but then there was this lull, right? And then they had to help get it back. I want it to be continuous. So I think that's the big picture, long-term plan. In the short term, we're going to have to figure out how to make sure that these businesses come through this well. College Hill is doing a great job of supporting them. I mean, a lot of these Kiki and Tortilleria Garcia and Fern is doing weekend pickups. I mean, a lot of these businesses are continuing their sales. I mean, the coffee shop is showing pictures of this delicious looking food, and by the time you call up there, I mean, it's already gone. I mean, so people are supporting these businesses. Marty's Hops and Vines, there's people standing out in the parking lot. Silk Road Textiles, I mean, I was out not a couple weeks ago, and we saw all the face masks that they're making. And Terry Owen was out in back talking to us about how she's selling face masks all over the world. So keeping these businesses vibrant and thriving is going to be our immediate short-term plan. There are some things that we've had to put on hold. I mean, we've talked about the Hollywood and what that's going to look like. Obviously, we are largely dependent on some city funds. And I don't know what that's going to look like. Yep. And so I think it's silly to sit here at this point and try to guess what that's going to look like. So we're going to have to take it slow for a little bit, manage what we have. I think we have some great opportunity. People are seeing as they're driving up Hamilton Avenue every day, there are things changing. There's a Dow Corner building. We have a new restaurant, Master Roots, that's still coming. That hopefully will be open here in a couple weeks, month maybe, or something like that. So, there's still going to be some momentum, but we just got to make sure that it goes. And then the next 5 to 10 years, we really want to see people continue to come to the neighborhood, have different housing options, have the ability, like I said, to be able to buy their first home here, move to a second home, retire here, have their kids buy their, rent their first apartment, have their first jobs here, all those sorts of things. So that's kind of in the short term, and it's going to take everybody in the neighborhood to make it happen. So we're counting on them, and I think history has shown that people in College Hill are up for the task. So we will see.
That's it's exciting stuff, man, and kind of watching all this come together over time. It's truly been exciting, and really for all the folks in College Hill and on the boots on the ground, getting their hands dirty, doing all this hard work. Just kudos to all of you, and certainly Jake, you've led on this effort. So thank you for dedicating so much time and energy to the city of Cincinnati in general, and to College Hill in particular. So with that, speaking of kudos, Joshua Reitano says best interview in this series yet. So thanks for that. Thanks for that.
I may or may not know that guy.
Really appreciate it. He says you are a confident optimist. I like that. I don't think I've ever heard that phrasing quite like that, but I think that's a good way to be. What we don't want to have is this scenario where we go through this 20-year lull like we did before. And so you kind of see this creative energy where you're talking about businesses adjusting their business model, looking for new ways. And so I think in these times of great uncertainty also it provides opportunity for great optimism going forward.
That's right. And one of the things, Derek, that we have at Chirk, and we are more than excited about and extremely lucky, we have great staff. Seth Walsh is the executive director. I mean, he is absolutely killing it. It's almost annoying because I'm at work. He calls me. He says, Jake, I got an idea. I'm like, Seth, I'm working. Like, come on. He's like, no, we got to talk about it. But Seth is doing a great job. I mean, Tony Thompson is managing all these properties and doing a great job. And Sean is, our business district has never been as clean as it is right now during COVID. And so, those guys are doing a great job. And Brienne is going to do a phenomenal job in the summer with these events that we hope to be able to bring back. And she's doing a great job in, our communications. Seth and I have a happy hour now every Tuesday. Last week we had Ed Lloyd, our College Hill historian, on. So we've had some good conversations. So we're just surrounded by a lot of good people. So it's easy to be confidently optimistic because I think when you're around good people, it rubs off on you. So yeah, I just want to surround myself with good people,
That's awesome. You do have a great, Seth's a friend of mine, and that guy has more energy. So you are blessed with a great team out there. So in that regard, if somebody wants to get more engaged, wants to get involved, maybe wants to buy or make a donation or something like that, how can they get in contact and learn more about any of the organizations that we've talked about?
Obviously they can check us out we have a pretty good social media presence, but we also have a website. It's the College Hill. I should know this off the top of my head. Seth's gonna.
I put you on the spot. My bad.
You did. Hold on. I can find it because you got to be careful because Matt Bourgeois stole our domain name and it gets weird. And then but we do have a really nice revamped website that you should all visit. It's Chirk CHCURC.com. I don't know how I didn't remember that, but it's the place where you can go and you can look at all the properties we have. So if you're looking for an apartment, I think we have a few for rent, and that's where you can go and make a donation and contribute to the work that we're doing. But yeah, I mean, you can call the office and talk to Seth and Brienne, and get at us through Facebook or Instagram, all those different ways as well. So
that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that information. Hopefully everybody does. Oh, and speaking of Seth, he just dropped by to remind us of the website, which you just mentioned, and also email info@chcurc.com as well. So thanks for that, Seth. With that, I think we're going to close the show this evening.
I'll see you at Brink, Derek.
I'll definitely see you there. Jake, thank you. Everybody that tuned in, thank you so much for the comments, for all the love, the likes and the hearts and all of that stuff. Really appreciate it. Obviously, you can get a hold of me, Derek Bauman, just about on any social media at Derek Bauman. And also, if you want to go back, these will stay up on Facebook, on my page, my personal page as well. and also on my YouTube. So if you want to go back and just check out any of the other shows or watch more of this one, just search Derek Bauman on YouTube, and that should come up. So with that, for myself and Josie, who has just been super chill tonight over here, posted up. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us, Jake. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule tonight and sharing all that fantastic information. And we will see you all next week. We're doing this Monday through Thursday at 7 p.m. for the time being. We're going to have some more great guests from across the city of Cincinnati. So thank you all. Thanks again, Jake. And we will see you soon. Peace, Cincinnati. We love you.